Good evening, everyone. My name is Emma, and I am a British storyteller. Tonight, it's a pleasure for me to guide you on a visit to a small workshop where careful hands shape round glass floats that will later hang above the docks, catching the light of the night and the movement of the sea. So settle in, breathe slowly, and let the quiet journey begin as the ferry carries us gently across the water toward the glass float makers. The ferry moves forward at an even pace, its hull parting the dark water without disturbance. Moonlight shifting softly across the surface of the sea. The horizon remains long and level, separating the darker water from the quieter sky above. Far ahead, a faint cluster of small lights rests close to the waterline. Their reflections stretch and shorten with the movement of the tide. The ferry continues toward the glass float makers at the same steady speed. Dark water stretches quietly between the ferry and the outer docks ahead, the surface rising and falling in long, patient swells that move through the open sea without hurry. Above the water, the night sky remains clear and steady, scattered with small points of starlight that rest calmly over the distant horizon. Far ahead, low wooden walkways begin to separate from the darkness, where the floating settlement sits at the edge of the tide, quiet at this late hour, with most windows dark and only a few dim lights resting behind closed shutters, while the narrow paths between the houses lie empty beneath the still sky. Beyond those quiet buildings, the outer docks reach farther into the water. Narrow platforms supported by rows of tall wooden posts that stand patiently in the slow-moving sea. Soft glimmers gather around those posts, where the water shifts gently against the timber. Near the outer walkway, faint, rounded shapes hang along the dock rail in careful rows. As the ferry moves a little closer, their curved surfaces begin to gather fragments of surrounding light, catching small pieces of brightness before letting them soften again into the night. The water beneath them carries faint mirrored shapes across the surface of the tide. Long beams run beneath the dock platforms, descending into the darker water below, where quiet ripples slide slowly between the supports. Farther along the platform, a low wooden workshop stands near the edge of the dock, its roofline sloping gently toward the sea. A steady glow rests inside the windows of that building. Warm light spills softly across the planks outside the doorway, spreading outward in a calm pool that touches the nearby railing. Rows of hanging glass floats catch that glow along the outer edge of the dock, their rounded shapes bending the light into soft, curved reflections that seem to rest briefly inside the glass. Below them, the slow movement of the sea gathers those reflections again, carrying quieter versions of the same shapes across the dark surface of the water. Some glimmers remain steady inside the glass spheres, while others shift gently as the tide continues its slow rise and fall beneath the dock. Wooden posts pass quietly beside the ferry as the approach continues, their dark silhouettes standing against the moving water. Between those posts, the hanging floats appear in longer rows now, suspended neatly along the rail beside the workshop. Each curved surface holds a small piece of the surrounding night. Some contain a soft trace of the workshop glow. Others gather faint points of starlight from the sky above, where the curved glass turns those distant lights into tiny rounded reflections. The sea continues its slow, steady movement beneath the docks, carrying those softened shapes outward across the water before they fade back into the darker tide. Ahead, the quiet workshop of the glass float makers rests beside the outer dock, its warm interior light reflecting gently across the curved rows of glass and the calm water below as the ferry glides steadily closer. The outer dock now stretches clearly beside the ferry, its narrow platform resting on tall wooden posts that stand patiently in the dark water below. The boat eases closer, its forward motion slowing until the hull glides quietly along the edge of the platform. Rows of hanging glass floats appear along the rail above the water, their rounded shapes suspended neatly beside the dock. Some of their curved surfaces gather the warm glow from the nearby workshop windows, holding small pockets of light within the glass before letting them soften again. Below them, the dark sea carries faint, mirrored shapes across the surface of the water. A small bell sounds once from the ferry, a clear, gentle note that drifts across the still night air. The sound fades quickly, leaving the quiet water undisturbed once more. The vessel drifts the last short distance toward the platform, guided slowly into place beside the dock. Wooden posts slide past the side of the hull as the boat settles along the berth. A length of rope is passed from the ferry to the dock. The line is drawn across the rail and looped neatly around a waiting cleat on the wooden platform. With a quiet pull, the rope tightens, securing the boat beside the dock. The ferry shifts gently as the tension settles along the line. Water moves softly between the hull and the posts beneath the platform. Nearby, the rows of hanging glass floats turn slightly in the calm night air, catching fragments of the workshop light. Some reflections remain steady inside the glass spheres. Others change slowly as the water moves beneath the dock. The workshop itself now stands directly beside the ferry, its windows glowing with steady, warm light. That glow spreads across the planks of the platform and touches the nearby rail, where the finished floats hang in careful rows. With the rope secured and the boat resting against the dock, the ferry settles into stillness beside the glass float maker's workshop, while the narrow wooden platform stretches away along the edge of the water. Stepping onto the planks, the wood beneath your feet shifts slightly with the slow movement of the sea below. The dock is narrow here, bordered on one side by the dark water and on the other by the rail, where rows of glass floats hang in careful lines. Each float rests inside a simple rope net. Some of the rounded glass spheres hold soft reflections from the workshop windows nearby. Others gather small points of starlight from the open sky above the docks. As you walk along the platform, the hanging floats move only slightly, turning just enough for the light inside them to shift. Below the dock, the water moves quietly around the posts, carrying faint mirrored shapes away from the platform. The workshop windows glow warmly ahead. Tall panes of glass reveal the interior of the room, where long wooden benches run along the walls. Several tools hang neatly above the work surface, their silhouettes dark against the steady amber light inside. A rack of newly formed glass floats rests near one of the benches, the rounded shapes arranged carefully in padded rows while they cool. Outside the building, a small table stands beside the door, holding baskets filled with finished floats ready for storage. Their curved surfaces catch the light from the windows and scatter it gently across the dock. The smell of warm glass drifts faintly through the air, mixing with the familiar scent of salt and weathered wood. A coil of rope rests near the wall beside the doorway. Nearby, several empty nets hang, ready to hold the next batch of floats once they are finished. The planks creak softly as the dock settles beneath the slow rhythm of the sea. Overhead, a few hanging floats shift slightly in the calm air, their curved reflections sliding slowly across the glass. Ahead, the open doorway of the workshop glows warmly against the dark dockside, inviting the next quiet step inside. Stepping through the open doorway, the warmth of the workshop settles gently around you after the cool air of the dock. Soft amber light fills the room, spilling from several lanterns that hang above the long wooden workbenches. The interior is tidy and carefully arranged, with tools resting neatly along the walls where they can be reached easily during the quiet hours of work. A broad work table stretches across the centre of the room. Upon it, several finished glass floats sit in padded trays, their smooth surfaces catching small pieces of the surrounding light. Near one wall, a rack holds rows of newly formed spheres where they cool slowly after being shaped. Each one rests inside a small cradle of cloth to protect the glass while the warmth gradually leaves it. The faint scent of heated sand and warm glass lingers in the air of the room. Beside the benches stand tall metal blowing pipes, their ends darkened from long use in the furnace. A set of shaping tools rests nearby, their wooden handles worn smooth from careful handling over many nights of work. At the far side of the room, the furnace glows quietly within its brick housing. Its steady warmth fills the workshop without hurry. Inside the opening, molten glass rests in a soft orange glow, ready for the next float to be formed. A pair of padded stands waits beside the furnace, where the glass worker will soon rest the pipe while shaping the round forms. Nearby, coils of rope lie neatly arranged on a small bench, where finished floats will later be fitted with their netting. Wooden crates sit beneath the work table, each holding rows of completed floats ready to be carried out to the docks. The windows along the wall look back across the quiet water outside, where faint reflections drift slowly beneath the dock. Within the warm light of the workshop, the glass floats resting on the benches appear almost luminous, their curved surfaces holding the soft glow of the room. Everything inside the workshop is arranged for calm, steady work. Near the furnace, the air feels warmer against your face, and the difference is noticeable at once after the quieter coolness of the doorway and the dock beyond. A gentle working heat settles over the front of the room, strongest near the brick opening, where the orange glow rests steadily behind its iron rim. One of the long blowing pipes is lifted from its stand. The metal looks dark, except where the firelight touches it, and its length is turned carefully in the hands before being guided toward the mouth of the furnace. Inside, molten glass waits in a soft pool of light, thicker and brighter at its centre, with a faint shimmer moving across the surface whenever the pipe comes near. The end of the rod enters the heat. A small gather of glass is drawn out slowly, glowing orange at first, and then deepening toward amber as it leaves the brightest part of the fire. The pipe turns at once, steadily and without hurry, so the softened glass does not sink to one side while it is still warm enough to move. Close to the furnace, the warmth touches your cheeks more fully now, while the rest of the workshop remains gentler behind you, divided into quiet bands of heat and cooler air. A few steps carry the pipe to the padded shaping stand beside the bench. There, the rod is rolled lightly across its supports, and the glowing gather turns in place with a slow, even rhythm. The glass looks almost fluid at its edges, holding its shape, and yet still soft enough to respond to every small movement of the turning pipe. A careful breath travels through the hollow rod. At first, the change is slight, barely more than a rounding from within. But as the pipe continues to turn, a small pocket of air begins to open the glass into a sphere. Warm light moves across its surface as it grows, and the curved skin of the float starts to catch the glow of the room in a softer, steadier way than before. Another breath follows, unforced and measured, and the glass expands a little further until the familiar rounded form becomes easier to see at the end of the pipe. Nearby tools wait in tidy order on the bench, their wooden handles smooth from use, while the quiet room holds only the low sounds of turning, breathing, and the faint settling creak of timber beneath the floor. A shaping block is lifted and brought gently around the warm sphere. As the pipe turns, the glass meets the tool with a soft, controlled pressure, and the roundness becomes more even, the surface smoothing while the heat slowly begins to leave it. Here, the warmth is strongest, not harsh, but close and steady, so that your hands feel it near the pipe, and your face notices it whenever you lean toward the newly formed float. The sphere now holds its shape with more certainty. Its curved surface reflects the furnace glow, the workshop light, and a faint suggestion of the window beyond, all gathered together in a small, bright world inside the glass. Satisfied with the shape, the pipe is lifted once more and carried toward the cooling rack, where padded cradles wait beside other finished floats made earlier in the night. The new float is set down carefully among them. It rests there quietly, still warm, its glow beginning to soften while the heat leaves it little by little, and the room returns to its slower, steadier rhythm. Back at the furnace, the pipe is turned once again toward the fire, ready for the next careful gathering of glass. The warmth near the furnace remains steady as the work continues, a gentle heat that settles comfortably across the front of the room, while the rest of the workshop stays cooler and still. Another blowing pipe rests across the padded shaping stand. At its end, a newly formed sphere turns slowly, while the glass continues to firm as it cools. A small pair of trimming shears is lifted from the bench. With a careful movement, the narrow neck where the glass meets the pipe is scored and gently separated. The finished float is carried to the cooling rack beside the wall. There it rests, among several others formed earlier in the evening, their rounded shapes arranged in quiet rows across the padded supports. In the warm light of the workshop, the floats appear almost softly luminous, while the last traces of heat fade from their surfaces. Nearby, a small tool is used to shape a narrow glass loop at the top of one of the cooled spheres. The loop forms a simple ring where rope netting will later hold the float securely. A bundle of prepared cord rests on the workbench beside a wooden frame used for tying the nets. The rope is soft from handling and faintly scented with salt from the sea air outside. One of the cooled floats is lifted gently from the rack and placed into the frame. Lengths of cord are drawn around the glass in careful crossings, forming the simple net that will hold the float when it is placed along the docks or fishing lines. The knots are tied calmly and without hurry. Each movement follows the same steady pattern used night after night. When the net is finished, the float is lifted again and placed into a wooden crate waiting beneath the workbench. Inside the crate, several completed floats rest together, their smooth surfaces reflecting the warm glow of the workshop lamps. The quiet room continues to hold its slow rhythm of work. Near the furnace, another gather of molten glass glows softly in preparation for the next float. And along the cooling racks, rows of newly formed spheres wait patiently as the warmth gradually leaves the glass and the calm work of the night goes on. The warmth of the workshop feels gentler now as the work of the night comes to a quiet pause. Most of the tools have been set back in their places along the bench. The blowing pipes rest across their stands. The rows of finished floats remain on the cooling racks, slowly losing the last of their warmth in the calm air of the room. With the work complete for now, a simple wooden stool near the wall offers a quiet place to sit. The seat is smooth from many evenings spent here beside the steady glow of the furnace. Sitting down, the warmth of the room settles comfortably around you. The firelight flickers softly across the benches and the rows of rounded glass resting nearby. Your shoulders loosen a little as the stillness of the workshop begins to settle in. Breathing becomes slower without needing any effort. Each breath rises and falls gently in the quiet room. The warmth from the furnace reaches your face, while the cooler air of the workshop gathers softly around your hands and shoulders. Outside the windows, the dark water moves slowly beneath the docks. From time to time, a faint reflection shifts across the glass floats hanging along the rail outside. Inside the workshop, everything remains calm and unhurried. The steady glow of the furnace lights the room just enough to see the rows of finished floats resting quietly on their racks. Their smooth surfaces hold the soft reflections of the room. The gentle rhythm of your breathing continues, slow and easy. Warm air from the furnace rises slowly through the room, while cooler air drifts quietly near the floorboards. With the quiet work complete and the soft light of the workshop surrounding you, the night feels calm enough to simply sit and rest for a while. After resting for a while in the quiet warmth of the workshop, it feels natural to rise slowly from the stool and step once more toward the open doorway. Behind you, the room remains calm and softly lit, with the rows of finished floats resting quietly on their racks as they continue to cool beside the fading warmth of the furnace. Outside, the air along the dock feels cooler and fresh again. The night is still, and the water beneath the platform moves with the same slow rhythm it has kept all evening. A few unhurried steps carry you back along the narrow walkway toward the ferry waiting beside the dock. Along the rail beside the planks, the rows of hanging glass floats appear once more, resting in their rope nets just above the dark water. Here, outside the workshop, they seem completely at home. Some gather the soft glow from the windows behind you. Others hold small pieces of the moonlight now drifting across the surface of the sea. Each curved sphere carries its own quiet reflection, shifting slowly whenever the water moves beneath the dock. Reaching the ferry, the rope securing it to the cleat is loosened and drawn quietly back aboard. The boat shifts slightly as the line comes free. Then, with the gentlest movement, the ferry begins to drift away from the dock. At first, the workshop remains close beside you. The warm light from its windows still reaches across the rows of hanging floats. As the ferry glides farther into the open water, the dock slowly grows smaller. The workshop light softens into a quiet amber glow along the edge of the floating village. But the rows of glass floats remain clearly visible along the rail, turning slightly in the calm air above the sea. Moonlight now rests across their smooth surfaces. Below them, the water carries softer reflections that drift slowly outward across the dark tide. The ferry continues its gentle movement away, and the floats hang peacefully along the dock, shining faintly in the quiet moonlight above the slow-moving sea.